All right, welcome everybody to the series leading up to the Mint Collective, where we are highlighting collectors and their collections, how they built their collections, how they approach the hobby. And again, these are established collectors. So let's bring out our first guest in this series, Josh Dawson. Welcome to the show. How you doing today?
Hey, Jeremy, good to see you, man. Thank you. Thank you for
Yeah,
having me.
you bet, man. It's great to have you. So the reason why I want to bring you on the show, Josh, for this series in particular, is because number one, I respect and admire your collection. I've been following you on Instagram for a while. We had the opportunity to meet in person at an event at the National this past August. That was awesome. Got to know you a little bit. And I'm really just impressed with your pragmatic approach to collecting and building your collection. So let's get right into it. A bit of history on you. How did you get started in the hobby?
Sure. So it kind of goes way back to date myself. I started collecting, as most people did, baseball cards back in the day, right? About 1986, 1987. I was a set builder, started, doing it for fun, putting together sets on the cardboard table kind of thing. Um, and I grew up in St. Louis, just outside of St. Louis, and just enjoyed the hobby. Went to shows, met a lot of cool people. Got to meet Mickey Mantle and Muhammad Ali at sports shows and stuff. So got to meet some very cool athletes throughout the years, and then really started getting into basketball in kind of the 92, 93 range. Obviously, Michael Jordan and the Dream Team were the hottest thing on earth. Basketball being the closest place for me in Chicago, being in St. Louis, it was naturally almost my home team, right? So I gravitated towards basketball, and in about 93, 94, I sold everything in baseball cards. Mom and dad thought I was silly and crazy, and I started putting money into Michael Jordan and basketball. So yeah, I then obviously it kind of goes on from there, but that's kind of how I got started, was collecting baseball, pivoted into basketball at one point, and thank God for mom and some family friends for getting me into the hobby in the first place and buying me all those little packs.
And you've never looked back. I know you're very focused on basketball. You've got a very broad and diverse Michael Jordan collection. Before we dive into there, there's different ways to approach the hobby. There's a pragmatic approach, which I know that you're keen on, and I respect and admire in you. And then there's kind of the I guess you could call it, there's the buy what you love, collect what you love, and then there's the investment minded approach. Can you speak to the two different approaches and how you kind of position yourself among them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so I would definitely consider myself the first, right? The pragmatic approach. So I tended to buy what I loved. So going back to the 92, 93, when basketball was kind of hot, and I started opening all the Skybox and Hoops packs, right, back in the day. These are some of the cards that I was chasing. I found things like the Power and the Key, right, and the Scoring Kings, and the Finest. The first year of Finest came out, right. So these are cards where I just loved them. I collected them because I loved them. I had no issue about the money. I didn't care about the money. Obviously, at that time, it was, the cost base was so much lower than it is today. But I didn't chase it for the money. I wasn't invested minded at all. I was a kid, so I just liked them, and I thought they were kind of shiny and cool. I liked Michael Jordan, so I bought what I loved, and that's and I looked in the hobby shops and opened a lot of packs and that kind of thing. And then obviously, as you grow older, I just kind of kept collecting through, I guess, really hard from 93 to about 97, 98. And then took a break, obviously, as most people did in college and stuff, got back into the hobby in around 2003, and kind of the hype around LeBron James and that kind of thing. So that's kind of, how I got to where I am. But as far as being investment minded, like, I just wasn't ever that way. Now, obviously, there's a financial component you cannot ignore. But I think for me, it was all about buy what you love. I was never in it to buy and sell. And nowadays it's all about buying and selling cards, right? And trying to, make a quick dollar and that kind of thing. That's never really been my thing. I'm a terrible seller, as most people can tell you. It's one of my worst things. I hoard everything, and I keep collecting, and trying not to run out of space. But
You love the cards, right? Like the act owning the card, owning a card that you love, being a collector in the hobby. It's just difficult to explain why is it that we love these cards that we collect, but we do. We do for whatever reason. Now, when you say that, back in the day, you didn't really worry about the money because the cost base was so much lower than it is today. Yet nowadays, if you're going to buy a card and you're going to spend a significant amount of money for you, whatever that threshold, that level of money is for you, I think it's important that you do consider the investment, because you're deploying capital that could otherwise be used for other things in your life, for your family, for your future. How do you, as a collector who continues to build your collection, how do you kind of go through and assess the, kind of weigh out or balance out the money versus the card? Do you have a checklist of criteria that you run through? How do you kind of process those decisions?
Yeah, it's a bit difficult, right? I mean, I think for me at this point, I've collected a lot of what I wanted. I obviously have a checklist of things I really desire, and at this point, they're so expensive. It's hard for me to obtain those. To be honest, to get the collection I have today, I could never afford it again, right? I got lucky because my cost base was so low, and I got into things when I could afford them. And it just wasn't about, the value hadn't surged. But I think at this point, for me, I'm a family guy. I have a full-time job, right? So for me, the primary focus is obviously family. If I have discretionary income, then obviously I either save up for something larger, or I, sort of scour eBay for the cheaper things I'm missing. But I think for me, the other big thing is I usually have to have an emotional attachment to the player. So I watch a game, I get excited about some player. I don't chase the hype, right? So I'm not going to buy Zion just because everybody else is buying Zion, right? I don't chase Tyler Hero because he played really well for one game or one season, right? I'm not a real big speculator. Not to say that's wrong to do, but I always collect people that are already established. So for me, it's watching somebody, feeling, kind of getting emotionally tied to them in some way, really enjoying the way they play, thinking that long term, this could be a good investment. They're not going to be out of the league in 2 years, right? Or be injury prone. And that's where I kind of put my money.
You mentioned scouring eBay, as a way to locate cards. I want to touch on the actual building of the collection. Part of being a collector, part of being a hobbyist in our hobby is the act of hobbying. And a lot of that, it's not just opening up packs of cards like it used to be. It's now, communicating with others in the hobby, whether it's on Instagram or Facebook groups, or consuming content on YouTube, scouring eBay, going to card shows, talking to friends about it. What, in your experience, has been one of the most beneficial channels for you to actually acquire cards that you want that might be rare? Like, it's easy enough to find a 1986 Fleer Michael Jordan rookie. Anyone can find one any day. There's always a couple hundred available on various platforms like say eBay. However, rarer cards are not as easy to find. So how have you kind of managed to overcome the challenge of locating rare cards when you decide it's time to find one?
Yeah, so I mean, when I mentioned scouring eBay, I used to, this is 10 years ago, I used to scour eBay and find 10, PSA 10 Jordan cards for $8 a piece. And so I was like, well, it costs $5 to grade them at that time. And so I thought, well, it's almost like getting the card for free. So I just started amassing all the PSA 10 cards I could of Michael Jordan. Obviously, eBay is the number one, but it goes back in history. That's the biggest thing that allows everyone to find cards. But to your point of finding rare cards and harder to find things, for me, I'm not big on Facebook. I just don't use social media too much. But through friends of ours, I just started using Instagram really heavily during COVID in the last 2 years. And that's a great way to meet people like yourself and a lot of other friends that we have in common. And it's really, that's the way for me. I've educated myself more on things I didn't understand about the hobby. Understood a lot of almost like the political side of things in the hobby. And then also, the collectors that do have those rare cards, to find those cards, you have to find the person, right? They're not out and available for sale. You have to track them down. You have to know that Jeremy knows so-and-so that knows so-and-so that has that card, right? So it's talking to people like yourself, talking to all our mutual friends in the different Instagram groups and chats, and then enjoying their collection, kind of a little bit of show and tell back and forth. And through that, you help each other, right? You help each other find the cards you're missing. You help each other plug in holes in their PCs. And for me, I'm super happy when I can help somebody else too, and I'm not a jealous person. I love when people have nicer collections than me. I love to envy, in a good way, their stuff. And I love that part of the hobby. And through Instagram, I think that would be my answer. Is I found a lot of cool people and cool cards through that channel.
So really, I think what I'm hearing is relationships and building relationships, right? And I know because
100%.
we do travel in some of the same circles, and we have some common friends. And something I've learned over the years is that it's relationships, but it's not just the relationship, it's being able to generate referrals from people as well. Because let's face it, we love our cards to the degree where if we're ever going to move one out of our personal collection, we're not just, sometimes, like, some cards you don't care what happens to, but special cards, we're not going to let them go to some anonymous person. We want to make sure they end up in a good home. And I think that new people coming into the hobby need to almost at least be cognizant of that and invest some time into building these relationships, so that if a card becomes available that you want, you almost have to apply to be able to own that card from the person that has it, so that they'd even consider selling it to you. Because some people would rather take less money for a card from someone that they know isn't going to sell it right away, or someone that where they know it's going into a good collection, versus taking more money from someone who's just going to flip it or doesn't really care about that card, that player, that hobby, is more just interested in the value of it. Am I out to lunch on that, or what do you think? Have you ever come across that?
100% on point. I'll give you two examples. One of my grails, I did move to a friend in St. Louis, who we're all friends with. It was a dual autograph card with a bunch of inscriptions on it. The reason I sold it to him, and I had even better offers, to be honest, is because I know it was a missing piece. It was something that'll never leave his PC. It's going to stay in his personal collection forever. And, I really wanted to help him. And I thought it was a win-win for both of us. On the same hand, this morning, literally today, I was talking to another friend of ours who has a very rare Michael Jordan card that I'm trying to acquire and looking to own. And he led me in the direction of somebody else who owns one that, is potentially for sale. So, that's kind of the avenue, like you just spoke about, with Instagram, finding people who, know, but also will trust the fact that everybody knows I don't sell those kind of grail cards, right? So it's, for me, it's a long term. Once I have it, unfortunately, it's locked away.
Can you do me a favor? Can you sort of, and this might be tough, but can you sort of define what a grail card is to you? What, not the specific card, but what's a grail? We hear the term so much. Define grail card for us, please.
For me, it's, I'll just look through the eyes of Michael Jordan cards, right? Because that's where I can best answer that question. For me, it's a rare card. First and foremost, it's not available for sale often. You very rarely see it. There's not going to be 100 copies floating around the National, right? It's got to have some value to it. I would say, there's no such thing as a grail that's $100. It's got to have a significant value. Whatever that means could be very different to different people. But I think, the ones that are most desired, obviously, are the grails. And the way they're most desired is both in terms of value and scarcity. So I think it really comes down to supply and demand. There's, out of a lot of MJ collectors I know, there's 50 people looking for, 3 of them have that card, and everyone else is looking for the same card. That kind of constitutes a grail for me.
And as far as the value of a grail, because you said there's no such thing as a $100 grail, I agree with that completely. For you, what's the minimum value of a true grail today?
Tough question. I would say at least $25,000.
Okay.
At least. I mean, the true big grails are the ones at the top of the list. I mean, there's a pyramid within the grail sphere, right? But I think at the top of that list, they're $250,000.
Okay. Okay. So from 25,000 to about $250,000, and even up. If you think about the PMG Green, Michael Jordan, I mean, you're not getting into one of those for under $1 million nowadays. There's only maybe 3 out of the 10 that are even in circulation, if there's any, I would
Right.
say. So, right.
Right, and that's why, you know, the ones I have that I consider grails, I had them for 20 plus years, and I'm really fortunate I got them when I did because I could never afford them nowadays, quite honestly.
So I've mentioned your collection that I've admired it. I do follow you on Instagram. Give the audience a bit of an idea as to the breadth of your collection. How many cards do you have? How many players do you collect? And how often are you acquiring cards to build up this collection?
Yeah, so I really primarily focus on Michael Jordan and LeBron James. Those are the two main ones. I started. Remember, like I said, I was kind of getting into things in the early 2000s, late 90s. When PSA announced their set registry, I kind of got lucky. I chose PSA versus another company, in my opinion. But because they had the set registry, that's why I did. And so it was really fun for me to see how many cards I could acquire of Michael Jordan within that set registry. So unlike a lot of collectors who like to consolidate, I'm exactly the opposite. I want to have one of everything, right? So I just started going out, and that's why I bought 10 card lots for $8 a piece. And just, even though they're $10 cards, I didn't care. I just wanted one of every Michael Jordan. At this point, I probably have about 9,000 total graded cards. About 6,500 of those are Michael Jordan. I'd say another quarter of that, maybe maybe 1,000, 1,500 are LeBron. And then I went back into my, now that I have a little bit of more discretionary income, I actually went back and, I buy cheap cards too, just things that I grew up with that I love. Here's an example. So cheap Frank Thomas card, right? But it's a Frank Thomas rookie card. I grew up with Frank Thomas, Ken Griffey Jr., Mike Piazza, those guys, right? So I love going back and just getting cheaper baseball cards. These aren't so cheap, but kind of classic rookie cards from baseball. And then the most of my collection is either Michael Jordan, LeBron James, older baseball, key rookies. I'm trying to collect some Mantles, Mays, Maris, those guys, some of the older baseball. And then I round it off with some of the newer guys that I really trust and believe in. Like there's a very few rookies. I talked about speculation. I don't follow the hype. There are a couple new players that I really do love personally, and I think their longevity is well entrusted. So these are kind of guys, again, cheaper cards, but I like John Morant. So I just picked this up. It's a cheaper card, but it's shiny. It's not numbered or anything. It's just a fun card for me. I don't think I can lose any money on it, and it's $100 or less kind of thing. And that's kind of rounds off the PC. Penny Hardaway, Shaq, a couple other basketball players, Vince Carter, that I kind of try to collect. But again, when push comes to shove and you have to choose, you can't collect everyone. So I try to stay in my lane a little bit and stick with Michael Jordan and LeBron. I have enough missing there still.
You really had raised my eyebrows when you said 6,500 Michael Jordan cards, 1,500 LeBron James cards. I mean, I know how much room these things take up. That's no small stack, let's just say. So
yes.
I admire that. I like that you're a completionist. You like to have one of everything. I think that's cool. How often are you buying cards? Like even, I mean, over the last couple of years, have you bought from 1 to 10 cards a month, or sort of describe it that way?
Yeah, I think it kind of goes in a little bit of spurts depending on discretionary income, but I would say I try to buy a few cards a week. So I would probably say anywhere between 10 and 20 cards a month. It just depends if there's some cards, some months I might only buy 5 cards, and some months I buy 30 cards, just depending on, the auction house, what people like PWCC have out, right? What I'm missing. So it a little bit varies, but I'd say roughly 20 to 30 cards a month.
Okay, no, that's fair. That's very instructive for new people coming into the hobby who are looking to build out a collection. And speaking of new people that are coming in, what advice would you give someone who is coming into the hobby that has, let's say, a decent budget? I'm talking, let's say, let's shoot for the stars here, like $10,000 a month budget, let's say. What sort of advice would you give somebody who's coming in with those sorts of means, but doesn't have a ton of history and experience in the hobby like you and I do?
I'd say there's two ways to approach it, right? One is if they have an emotional tie to a player and they really like someone, right? And they love the way that Luka plays and they just love Luka. You can't go wrong collecting the player you love, as long as you're not overpaying according to comps and things like that. I would always say try to have some emotional attachment if you're a true hobbyist. If you're looking at the other side of the coin and you're only investment minded and you're looking to make money, then it's a little bit different. Then you kind of chase who the hottest player is at that time, right? And you try to, hope they do well that season and sell the card at the end of the year. For me, obviously, I'm the first example there. I would always tempt to say never chase the hype. I would never speculate on somebody just because you hear they're good. Obviously, it worked out for LeBron, but a lot of players, you're gonna fail more than you're gonna win when you try to find the next Michael Jordan, right? So I would say, don't always chase what you hear is hot. I mean, watch the players, see if you like them. I didn't start collecting LeBron James till 2006. I waited a couple of years. Everybody knew in high school he was great, right? But I didn't trust it. I wanted to see for myself, and he hadn't won a championship or anything, but I loved the way the guy played for 3 years, and then I started collecting his cards. And same with Ja. I didn't buy anything until this year, right? So I waited a year to see kind of everybody is hyped on Zion. To be honest, I like Ja Morant better. So, for me, it's watching the games, connecting to the player. If you're not watching any of the games, you don't care about the sport, you don't care about the players, and you're just looking at his investment, it's a little bit different, right? Then I would say you got to kind of watch what's hot and chase the player for that month or that season.
That's excellent advice. I want to say specifically what I mean is that that you didn't buy LeBron for the first 3 years. You wanted to see for yourself. Of course, I say that's excellent advice because I did a very similar thing when it comes to Connor McDavid in hockey. He was all the hype, all the rage right in his rookie year in 2015-16. And I used to say, I'm not playing the Connor McDavid game. Players get injured a lot early. I'm not going to invest, sort of, because there was a lot of potential baked into the prices. I wanted to make sure that there was some foundation for future values to remain before I dove in. And now that I do believe he's the real deal, that he will be a top 5 player of all time, I'm now willing to deploy more capital into his cardboard than I was at the beginning. So we're on the exact same page there. I knew I liked you, man. I knew I liked your approach to the hobby. We are doing this as a lead up to the Mint Collective, which is in Las Vegas, January the 28th to 30th. I'm not sure if you're going to be there, but if you are, that's going to be great. I think you should come. I think it's in there. We got a card show. We've got masterclass events. We've got the carnival. We've got the Mint 25 auction. What are the chances you are going to be able to make it out for the event?
I'm working around some personal calendar issues, but I believe I will make it.
That's excellent, man. Well, listen, I can't wait to see you there. It'll be great to see you again for the first time since the National in Chicago this past August. Josh, thanks so much for joining. This has been great. I hope that everyone finds your insights and your approach to be very valuable and inspiring as I do. Thanks again for joining.
Thank you for having me, Jeremy. I appreciate it.